What is a design development record? Well, put simply, the DDR is the comprehensive record of the design process for a specific design project. It contains everything to do with that project, including brainstorming pages, brief planning pages, product analysis and research findings pages. It includes photographs of models and notes on the models. It even includes rendering underlays, preparation for full renderings. And it can include A3 presentations of intermediate design submissions. So as long as it fits into A3 and is paper-based, it can go into the DDR. Even board planning for presentations can go into that. And of course, lots of design sketches. Lots and lots of design sketches. Seriously, lots of design sketches. All right, now there are some things that don't go into the DDR, and they are for pretty good reasons. Lecture notes don't go in. This can be quite voluminous, and lecture notes are not generally directly related to a project. Bulk printouts of readings and research documents shouldn't be inserted into the DDR. These are usually A4 in size, and that can make the DDR very cumbersome and unwieldy, and obviously not always really apparent in how it relates to the design process. So they are kind of like the background of the design process. They inform your research thinking, but they're not a big help to actually put in amongst the design sketches. And of course, physical models, because they're not two-dimensional, physical models simply won't fit within an A3 paper-based book, so don't try and put them in. Now, how many pages should you do in your DDR? Well, a rule of thumb we often use is between 5 and 10 pages per week. The reality is this is just a rough guide, and really the number of pages you do each week will depend on the stage of the project you're at. For example, when you're researching, you might be writing lots of notes in your DDR, but not necessarily doing lots of sketches at that moment. And at other stages, when you're ideating and developing the design, it's very easy to produce many, many pages per week. So this is only a very rough guide. The assumption is that more sketches will lead to more design development and ultimately produce better designs. Now let's look at an example DDR. Now before we start looking at this, it's important to note that every project is a little bit different, and every DDR is an individual document. Every student will do the DDR slightly differently. This DDR was done by Christian Larsen in DNV 101 Industrial Design 1 in 2009. For this project, students were required to choose either a printer or a cordless electric drill for their design project. And they also had to choose a designer to be inspired by and a user group to design for. So let's have a look at this particular project. So this is the first page. You can see the students talking about what shall I use? What will I have to design? And pretty quickly you can see we're focused on the cordless electric drill with notes on existing cordless electric drills and related products. This is a presentation layout planning page. So here's the research board presentation. So you can see information about the designer, Dieter Rams, some of his work, the visual hallmarks of that design, the things that make it distinct and identifiable, and research images of existing products, so existing cordless electric drills. And finally, images which help define and understand the user group, so obviously a middle-aged domestic market. And now we've reached actual concept development pages. So here we can see the student exploring various ideas and for a cordless electric drill, different views, the arrangement of the internal components, which can be really important in some products. And now we've reached already the initial concept presentation stage. Now, if there's one criticism I'd have of this design journal is that there really aren't a lot of sketches leading up to the initial concept presentation. So the actual exploration done prior to this stage is a little bit thin. Let's have a look at it though. And so we can see the doorknob drill, which we saw an earlier version of a few moments ago. And then a variety of different other concepts. So as I said, if there's one criticism I'd have of this particular student's submission, is that it's a bit thin in terms of the actual development that preceded the initial concept presentation. All right, now we're into the concept development stage. So at this stage, the design has been chosen. In this case, it was that doorknob drill. And so the student commences the process of detailing and developing that design. You can see the students getting right into various details, chuck arrangements, a charging base, more on the charging base, even some consideration about how the thing will be assembled. That's not something most first year students generally do, because we don't give you that kind of manufacturing information this early in the course. Control details. Variations on the form to help with grip. Trying to stay in the theme of the Ditaram style, very geometric. And now we've reached the final concept presentation. So this is where the designer shows the way the design is heading, but it's not actually finished yet. It's not the completed project. Font and sort of style experiments for the presentation boards. Layout of the boards, what information goes on and in what order. Underlays for rendering, rendering trials. And here we see the A2 presentation boards. So these are not within the DDR, these are A2 panels. I've inserted them into this for continuity. So really just 2 pages showing the shape of the design and some of the details. So at this stage the design isn't finished, there are still more details to be resolved, to be improved. And so in the home stretch, the design refinement stage, the student is getting right into lots of different details. Details of labels and controls, details of plugs and charging bases, cases, a cylinder for storage, storage of drill bits, even some thoughts about how the cord is stored in the base and how it can be wound up inside the base of the unit. Thoughts on batteries, where the batteries are positioned in the drill. Variations on the styling are still possible at this stage, although be wary of unintended implications. Clutch arrangements, controls, and styling variations. So here looking at color variations with marker studies. Still more details on how the case assembles, how the cutouts and the molds work, how the screw threads go together, and presentation planning for the final design presentation. So these are experimental renderings, practices for the final design renderings. Also notes on the models that were done in parallel with the sketching. Here you can see various models, and the student has drawn over the black and white photographs of the models, and that makes it easier to trace them for later use in the presentation boards. Notes on changes made to the models, and even notes on the construction process, how this foam was lathed to create a regular shape, how filler was used to fill in any holes, and sanding and so on. And the final presentation preparation, so notes on what must go on it, and fonts, layout boards, storyboards, the sequence of use. Remember, a storyboard can help you explain the design that you've created. And so the storyboard on these panels helps explain the sequence of use, how you unpack the product, use it, and then how you put it away. Page layout planning, planning the style of the final design presentation. Underlays for the final renderings. And here we see the final design presentations themselves. Again, these are A2 panels which are not part of the DDR. But I think you can see how the underlays have been used as the basis for these renderings. All the details about the function, how bits are inserted into the drill, how the controls are arranged, how parts are stored, a brief page on the design influences and the user group, and orthographic views of the product with overall scales, and even a cutaway showing where all the internal components are. So really, all told, a very comprehensive DDR with a very thorough design project. Let's lay all these pages out and see how the DDR is structured. So you can see at the start of the project, again, there aren't very many sketches for the initial concept generation. Again, this I think is a bit of a weakness of this particular DDR. Leading into the initial concept presentation, there aren't really very many pages, which probably explains why many of the initial concepts are a little bit crude, not very well refined, because the student actually hasn't done very many pages preceding these presentations. But things come good when we start developing the product. So the concept development phase, you can see there's a lot of detail here leading into the final concept presentation. And then after that, the student has spent a lot of effort really developing the details, and detailed design is a crucial part of the process. Model making has also enhanced the exploration process, looking at variations and making sure the ergonomics is acceptable, and then quite a bit of preparation leading up to the final design presentation. So again, a very thorough piece of work, even if it started a little bit shakily. So if we count the pages, you can see there's about 48 pages which are design development pages, concept pages. About 14 of the pages are presentation preparation, rendering underlay pages, and about 21 of those pages are actual presentation sheets, which are not, strictly speaking, part of the DDR. So there's about 90 pages here, including the title pages, about 48 of which are concept development pages proper. So these are what should comprise the majority of the designs. Now, if you're looking at that, it is very apparent there's a lot of work there. And this underscores the fact that design development, the design process, and creating a DDR is not a sprint. You can't create this kind of work very, very quickly. You can't do it in a couple of days or a week. This takes months of effort. And so really it's more of a marathon than a sprint. So the only way to produce a comprehensive DDR is to produce regular work. So as I said earlier, the design development record is a comprehensive record of your design process for a given design project. It's you're thinking about the product in one place, chronologically ordered from start to finish. But it's more than a record. It's your single most important thinking tool. Designers think visually through sketching, making notes and models. This visual thinking ability is what gives you the ability to solve complex three-dimensional design problems. Designing something is more of a marathon than a sprint. Sure, there are times when you need to get a lot done in a short amount of time, sometimes in the form of pulling an all-nighter, but this is only useful for executing ideas. Coming up with the ideas and developing them requires a steady pace of design over a longer period of time. This gives the ideas time to mature and develop. Regular feeding of your design project will make it grow strong. Occasional binging will leave it weak and sickly. Therefore, try to add to your DDR every day. Even a page or two between longer weekly sessions will help. This does a couple of things. It builds sketching skills. There's simply no way to get better at drawing than through regular practice. Regular sketching exercise builds up those sketching muscles. And it also enhances your ideation because it keeps your brain working on the design, even subconsciously, when you're not physically working on it. You'll have more ideas and do better quality work. So pace yourself. Try and work regularly throughout the week. Give it a try. Set aside a little time each day to do some sketching in your DDR. If you don't have any ideas at first, then begin by tracing over a previous sketch while making some arbitrary changes. Pretty soon you'll get some ideas flowing. Go with the flow. Remember to annotate your sketches and, after a little while, maybe as little as 15 or 20 minutes, set it aside. when you do sit down for a longer designing session, you'll find yourself more productive. A few final tips. It's a good idea to have a cover sheet for your DDR. This helps identify it. If you misplace it, you should be able to find its way back to you. Probably not a bad idea to put your mobile phone number on that cover page as well. And as you saw in the sample, it's quite nice to have section title pages as well. This helps structure the DDR and makes it a little bit easier for us when we're marking you. Also helps you keep things in order. And also to help keep in order is numbering all those pages. So you will sometimes take pages out of your DDR, pin them up on the board for a discussion or a presentation, informal presentation. And if those pages are numbered, it's much easier to put them back in the right order. So let's summarize. The DDR is a complete design process record. It contains all two-dimensional sketches and notes. You should aim to create at least 5 productive pages per week, ideally as many as 10 in some weeks. And try to work steadily, a little every day, as well as more intensive sessions on a weekly basis. So good luck with your DDR and good designing.